Hello, and welcome to part two of my fruit and vegetable presentation. Now let's get into confounders. While many of our variables were not significant predictors of fruit and vegetable consumption, some can be considered confounders. A confounder is a variable that may not be of primary importance or may not directly impact the outcome variable, but influences the relationship between responses and therefore the relationship between independent and dependent variables. In order to test for a confounding effect, I ran several logistic regression analyses and compared the coefficients in the new table to the original logistic regression results table. I removed a measured variable each time I ran a new regression. For example, I removed the gender variable from my analysis and ran the regression. I compared the newly calculated odds ratios with the odds ratio from my initial results. If there was about a 20% difference between the two coefficients, I could confidently confirm that gender was a confounder variable for those variables that had affected odds ratios. In this case, gender had a confounding effect on the size of a household a person lived in. There was a significant impact on the small, medium, and large households. Then I added gender back into the mix and removed the next variable, such as medium household size, and then I reran the regression analysis. In this slide, I included all significant confounders. A household income of under 50K was a statistically significant confounder for the white race, African American race, those with incomes between 50 and 100K, those with incomes above 100K, small households, medium households, and large households. This was the most extensive confounder in this analysis, and the most significant predictor of fruit and vegetable intake as well. Living in a medium household between 4 and 6 people is also a confounder for large households or households over 7 people. We went over gender moments ago, and then I removed African Americans as a race, and this variable had a confounding effect on those who identified as white. In a nutshell, these are the confounders in this analysis. This slide and the next few slides simply display my output tables after rerunning the regression analysis with my significant confounders and compares them to my original output. That included all the variables in my analysis. You will see this first table that shows the confounding results here for household incomes under 50K. I have highlighted the odds ratios in yellow on the confounding table and highlighted in green the significant differences between the original and the confounding tables in the original output table. Here, you are able to see that there is around a 0.2 or 20% difference between white, black, between 50K and 100K incomes, over 100K incomes, and all household sizes. I have used the same highlighting technique to display the odds ratio numbers I was looking at in the confounding table in yellow and the significant differences in the original output table in green. As previously mentioned, medium household has a confounding effect on large households. The odds ratio in the original dataset was 1.06 and the odds ratio in the confounding dataset is 1.23. Again, I used the same highlighting technique in this slide. You can see that the significant confounding effect when removing gender is in the household size. So small, medium, and large households were significantly affected by the variable of gender. Finally, I removed those who identified as black, which was a significant confounder with those who identified as white. We can see the odds ratio difference between those who identified as white goes from 2.36 in the original dataset all the way down to 1.32 in the confounding dataset. Now I will get into what all of this means. In short, we have discovered a couple significant predictors for fruit and vegetable consumption. Both income and gender affect whether a person is meeting the dietary guidelines of 5 servings of fruits and vegetables per day. We found that a household income of less than $50K is both a predictor of fruit and vegetable consumption, but also a confounder for many variables like white, black, income of $50K, and more, as well as household size. Today, 2 of the top 5 major public health issues facing America are obesity and diabetes epidemic and poverty. This analysis proves that the two are actually linked. Income affects fruit and vegetable intake, and fruit and vegetable intake affects obesity and diabetes, among other chronic illnesses, as mentioned at the beginning of this presentation. In short, this analysis has deep indications that income, and especially low income and those under the poverty line, are related to meeting dietary guidelines and nutritional intake. Obesity and diabetes are without a doubt related to nutrient consumption. To solve the issues behind the obesity epidemic, we need to ask how we can get more fruits and vegetables and other nutrient-dense foods to populations with high obesity rates. Now I want to go over just a couple limitations of my analysis. This entire analysis was done with data collected from a survey that relied on self-reported data. We know that self-reported data is subject to bias, and people may have fudged their numbers around income or fruit and vegetable consumption, or any of the other variables I looked at. In addition to that, this data was collected in 2014, so the data is already 5 to 6 years old. In the last 5 years, there have been several campaigns and programs launched to reduce obesity and educate people about nutrition and how to eat. So data from 2019 would be more indicative of where we are at this point in time. To wrap up, I want to touch on some future research questions that would be worth looking into based on the results from this logistic regression analysis and the greater implications for public health in America. I would love to further research 1, whether lowering the cost of fruit and vegetables would increase fruit and vegetable consumption. 2, would increasing fruit and vegetable consumption reduce obesity levels? 3, can we bring fresh fruits and vegetables to gas stations in more conveniently accessible areas? And will that allow people or convince people to consume more fruits and vegetables? 4, can we use different media campaigns to specifically target men to eat more fruits and vegetables? And 5, is it more effective to offer ideas on what to eat rather than what not to eat, like diets and restrictive dietary measures? I think results to these questions would be fascinating and really provide some insight into the best next steps as far as obesity prevention and healthy eating. This final slide lists the resources I used for research purposes. I hope you learned a thing or two, and I appreciate you listening. Thank you.